A Mother's Day Murder by D. Ernst. Chapter 3. When the girls came home, Tessa was not happy. She stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed defiantly, chin down, pouting. She was a mini-me, the same dark curly hair, big brown eyes, and thick, straight brows. She was built like me, too. Skinny legs, narrow hips, and sturdy around the middle. There was always a chance she would grow into a long-waisted nymph like Kate, but I doubted it. My prediction was that she'd be carrying around a fireplug pot body just like mine for the rest of her life. "I don't think Kate should go anywhere," she said with conviction. "She won't like it in France. She likes it here." I pasted on a smile. "Tessa, this is a great chance for Kate to live someplace new and really cool, meet lots of amazing people, and she can work at what she loves." Tessa glared. "Well, I hope they don't pick her. I hope they pick somebody else better." I put on my stern face. "Tessa, that's being mean. This is something your sister really wants. We should support her and hope for the best." "Daddy won't let her go." I glanced up at Kate, who stood behind her sister and rolled her eyes. "Daddy would never keep your sister from doing something she really wanted," I said. Tessa was not giving up. "When I see him tomorrow, I'm going to tell him, and he'll make Kate stay home." I sighed. Poor Tessa. Poor Kate. Actually, poor Mark. He really was a good dad, spending lots of time with Tessa, even taking her on vacation with him to his family's cabin in Maine every summer. His relationship with Kate was different, of course. Father-daughter things were difficult under the best of circumstances, and there was still a lot of baggage they were still filtering through. Kate loved her father and spent time with him. She had understood that although Mark had been the one to leave, every marriage and divorce was about two people. "Maybe Kate can go with you and Daddy tomorrow. What do you think, Kate?" Kate rolled her eyes again. "I'll tell Dad about France, and we can all talk about it together, okay?" Tessa sniffed. "He won't let her go," she said again, then turned and marched out and up the stairs. I looked sympathetically at Kate. "So I guess this was not a fun girls' night?" Kate threw herself into a chair. How can one little kid be so smart? She came up with 3 really good arguments for me staying before she went into her "because I said so" mode. "Well, let's face it, you both had exceptionally brilliant parents. I'd talk to your father tonight and let him know what's going on. If he gets blindsided by Tessa, he won't be happy." She nodded. "Yeah, you're right." She was quiet. I picked up my book and started reading again. "What if they don't pick me?" she asked finally, in a very small voice. I looked over at her. "Baby, they would be complete fools not to pick you. You're a Renaissance woman, for God's sake. You speak, what, 3 languages besides English? You're a literature whiz who's also a science geek. And you can talk the leaves off a tree. How could they not jump at the chance to have you on their team?" She smiled crookedly. "Thanks, Mom." She pulled herself up and went upstairs. I tried to get back into my book, but couldn't concentrate. Even though I read books every day for a living, I always chose reading over television at night to relax. I closed my book and started turning off the lights. I looked out the window and over at the Mitchell house. The porch light was off. The first floor was dark. A blue flicker in an upstairs window told me that someone was watching television. Was it Doug? No, it wasn't, because there was a light on in the next window, and a tall shadow crossed it. Again, and then again. Someone was pacing back and forth. I watched for 10 minutes. What was I expecting? For Doug Mitchell to race down the stairs, across the street, up the road to my front door, where he would tearfully confess that Lacey was stashed in the basement behind an old coal bin? I shook myself, turned, and went upstairs. It was not unusual for my mother to call me at 7 in the morning. In fact, it was typical. She knew I worked during the day. Afternoons were usually spent with Tessa, then came dinner. Since my mother was usually asleep by 8:30, mornings were her best time. It wasn't my best time, but for Mom, I didn't have to be a shining star. After my father died, Mom sold the house and moved into an assisted living facility. It made sense. We were already joking about her faulty memory before Dad became sick. I think he convinced her in those last awful days that trying to live alone in a 3-bedroom, 2-story colonial on half an acre was too much for her. I had felt a momentary cringe at the thought of my childhood home being taken from me, but my younger brother, Ted, finished it for me when he drew me aside after the funeral. "Listen, Ellie, I'm in Chicago," he said. "I can't help out here. Do you want to be the one running every time Mom can't find the remote?" Mom had a very large room in a very nice facility where they sang Broadway show tunes around a grand piano in the lobby every evening after dinner. They also organized weekly trips to Walmart and monthly excursions to museums, local theater, and craft shows. My mother loved her new life. No cooking, no cleaning, and someone else to drive her around. I had to admit I was a little jealous. So when the phone rang in my house at 7:05, I always knew who it was, even without caller ID. "Hey, Mom, how are you feeling?" I always led with that question so we could get the complaining portion of the conversation out of the way early. "Well, my knee." Ah, yes, the knee. Kate jokingly referred to it as a sports injury, as Mom got it when she fell trying to wrestle a Le Creuset Dutch oven, marked down to only $150 from another equally determined customer at TJ Maxx. "Don't take too much Tylenol, Mom." "Why? It might kill me?" I could picture my mother on her phone. She did not have a cell phone. The technological sophistication had proved too much for her very early in the game. She had a landline in her apartment and a very simple answering machine, and if she felt cheated of the latest marvels of Android and Apple, she didn't show it. She had a phone chair. It was the same phone chair she'd had in the old house, as well as the same phone table. When she was on the phone, she did not watch television, eat, or do her beloved crossword puzzles. She was all about the phone call. She would sit upright, both hands gripping the phone, eyes closed in complete concentration. "Oh, a little gas last night," she said inside. "I don't know why I eat broccoli." I poured myself some coffee. I had always managed to combine phone conversations with other activities. "High in antioxidants, Mom." "High in fiber." Mr. Milano almost blasted us out of bingo. "What are we doing for Mother's Day?" "I thought I'd pick you up early. We could have brunch here, then go to the Arboretum. They're having an orchid show." "I killed the last one I bought," she said sadly. "I know. You don't have to buy one. We can just look." "That sounds nice. I hope my knee is better by then." "It's a few days away, Mom. No tennis, and you should be fine." "You're not funny," she sniffed. "How are my darlings?" "Caitlin has a chance to go to France. We're all very excited." "They don't like us there," Mom pointed out. "And there are bombs." "Mom, there are bombs everywhere. They killed all those poor journalists." I sipped my coffee, thinking fast. "Mom, she won't be in the journalism district." "Oh? She'll be in the literature district." "Nobody gets bombed there." "Oh, well then, that's fine. Maybe Ted can fly out?" Sometimes I shifted gears as quickly as Mom, and sometimes it took me a bit longer. After trying to picture Ted in the literature district, I took 3 steps back in the conversation. "You mean fly here for Mother's Day?" "I'll ask him. He and Calvin would love the orchids." "Why, is that a gay thing?" My mother had a bit of difficulty with my brother coming out. She'd been raised in a strict Catholic Italian household, where homosexuality meant an immediate ticket to hell. She became gradually tolerant, even as her grasp on reality began to waver, so the ingrained myth truths of her childhood often became fuddled. No, Mom, it's not a gay thing. It's a cool and beautiful thing. Boot came and put her paw on my thigh. She seemed to know when Mom was on the phone and always offered moral support. When is Walmart Day? Tomorrow. I need sunglasses. That damn Justine Caldwell keeps stealing mine. Are you sure you aren't replacing them? My mother was robbed of some personal belonging at least twice a month, and Justine was a usual culprit. Having met Justine, I doubted her guilt, as the poor woman was confined to a wheelchair and couldn't steal a cotton ball without upping her oxygen intake. No, she took them. I wish I had enough money to buy a nice pair. Mom, I told you you have plenty of money. Just ask the aide. You have a spending account, remember? I think Justine stole it. Boo whimpered and wagged her stub of a tail. Mom, I've got to go. I'll see you Friday. Okay, dear. Give my love to Mark. That was always the saddest part. Even though Mark and I divorced before she started forgetting things, she had decided in her heart of hearts we were still married, and I'd long ago given up trying to talk her out of it. Tessa came into the kitchen, face wrinkled with sleep. Why does Grandma always call so early? Because she knows that I'm not usually doing anything so important, and I can talk to her. Can I have some breakfast? Of course, cereal, toast, one perfect scrambled egg. She slumped in her chair. Cheerios. Do we have strawberries? Yes. Coffee with that, a side of fries? She put her head between her hands in mock despair. Mom, I'm not treating you like a waitress. I'm not tall enough to reach the cabinet. Well, okay, start growing. It's time you started earning your keep around here. Do a few chores. Lift that bale. Tote that hay. She looked at me between her splayed fingers. Is that a movie thing that I never heard of, or a Broadway thing? I poured her cereal in a bowl and grabbed the milk and berries out of the fridge. Both. I think we have to start your classical movie education. She groaned. No, Mom, please. Kate loved classical movie nights. She chewed. Yeah, well, Kate's weird. She swallowed. Did you know that Jordan's grandpa got killed? I tried to look completely casual. Jordan Mitchell? No, I didn't know. Well, yesterday I tried to tell him I was sorry his grandpa was sick, and that my grandma sometimes didn't even know who I was. And he got really angry. He said his grandpa got killed. I swallowed my coffee very carefully. Really? He must have been very upset. He was. Mrs. Winship took him to the nurse because he started to cry. I felt kind of bad. Well, baby, it wasn't your fault. You were trying to be kind. She shrugged and finished her cereal in silence. Then she went upstairs and left me with Boot. I looked down at her soft brown eyes. Then I stood up and looked out the window to the Mitchell house. What the heck was going on here? Where was Lacey Mitchell? I think you're being ridiculous, Carol said. We were done with all the hills, and we were on the walking path around the lake. This was my favorite part of our walk, through the tall oaks that rimmed the water. Since the path was maintained by the county, the walking trail was wide and well tended, no ruts or sizable rocks to contend with. I think the whole thing stinks, Shelley said. Maybe, Maggie said, but what can we do about it? I was thinking about talking to the police, I said. And tell them what? Carol asked. I had no answer. I'd been running stuff over in my mind, and I had no idea what I thought, let alone what to do. Last night you were convinced we were all overreacting, Shelley said. Now you want to call the police? What happened? Doug spent most of his night pacing around his bedroom. Shelley raised an eyebrow. And we know that how? I made a face. I couldn't sleep. Every time I got up, the light was on, and I could see him pacing. Still, Carol said, that means nothing. This morning, Tessa told me that she tried to talk to Jordan about the sick grandpa, and Jordan got upset and said his grandpa got killed. I looked around. And I just happened to be walking Boot past the Mitchell house last night, and she was following something into the garage, and the one door happened to be open, and I saw that Lacey's car was missing. Grandpa got killed? Maggie echoed. Lacey's car is missing? Carol asked. Now that sounds like something. Let's look at this, I said. Lacey's father died suddenly, or was possibly killed, and left a lot of money to someone, maybe Lacey, because for some reason the wife wasn't even mentioned in the obituary at all. Lacey is gone, and her husband lied about her whereabouts. Her car is gone, and he told us he took her to the train station. We heard him say that. Her sons are really upset about something. You might have something, Carol said slowly. It's starting to get more complicated. Maybe you could just, talk to a detective or something? In fact, you should go and see Sam Canali. Who? I asked. She carefully stepped over a stray tree branch. He's a detective with Lawrence Township. I've met him a few times. He presented a few programs at the main library, and he seemed very friendly. In fact, I'm closing today and won't have to be at work until 4, so I'll go with you. Going to the police. So, we were going to find out what happened to Lacey and become neighborhood heroes, or we discovered that nothing happened at all and become neighborhood laughingstocks. We walked a little further, and Carol spoke again. So, I met someone on Fish. Carol had started dating. Her husband had been dead for nearly 5 years, and recently she decided to sign up for every dating site she could find. Her conversations were peppered with these days with some sort of cyber dating shorthand. Fish, J-Date, FOB, and SOH. Fish was Plenty of Fish, a dating site, as was J-Date. FWB meant Friends with Benefits, a big no-no for Carol. And SOH meant a sense of humor, a must-have. Leon, he's age-appropriate and financially secure. He wants to meet for coffee. Excellent, Shelley said. I think so. Carol was the type of woman who still wrote thank you notes and used linen napkins when she had us all over for lunch. She approached dating with the same efficient sensibility that she used for changing her seasonal house decorations, sending out Christmas cards, and having her tires rotated. For her, there was a proper time and place for everything. Right now, Leon fit in perfectly. Does he have a friend for Ellie? Shelley asked. Ellie, I said loudly, doesn't need his friend. Yes, you do, Maggie said. Do you want to grow old alone? I slowed to give Boot a chance to pee over a fallen log. I have children, Maggie. I'm never going to be alone. Okay, then, she countered. Do you want Kate choosing your nursing home? What could I say to these women? Sure, they were all my friends, and yes, I'd throw myself in front of a bus for them. But I could never admit, not even to these best of confidants, that I was still madly in love with my ex-husband. I'm sure Kate will do an excellent job, but thanks for thinking of me. We walked the rest of the way in silence. We all liked to talk, but we also enjoyed that moment halfway around the lake when the only thing you could hear was birdsong and the sound of our breathing. It appeared that any Lacey Mitchell conversation was closed until we found ourselves directly in front of the Mitchell house. We all stopped and stared. I wonder if her car is still gone, Shelley asked no one in particular. Are you thinking that someone returned it in the middle of the night? Carol asked. We all walked up the driveway. The left side of the garage was open, as it always was during the day. Yes, I suppose anyone could have snuck in and stolen any number of empty garbage cans or rakes or shovels, but that usually wasn't a problem in Mount Abrams. We walked into the garage. No Suburban. We started back down the drive when Shelley stopped short. The back door is open, she said. We looked. Yes, the screen was shut tight, but the actual door stood ajar. I wonder if somebody's in there, Maggie said in a somewhat hushed voice. Shelley climbed the back step, opened the screen, and yelled, "Hello!" Silence. Shelley opened the door further and yelled again. What are you doing? Carol hissed. Checking to see if everything is all right, Shelley said. What are you hoping to find? I called softly. She turned and grinned. Who knows? But don't you really want to see what the inside looks like? Maggie bounded up the back steps. Right with you. Carol cleared her throat. I refuse to participate in breaking and entering. That's fine. Then hold the dogs and yell if someone comes. I handed her boots and Buster's leashes. She glared at me. This is actually illegal, she warned. I climbed the steps behind Maggie and went into the Mitchell house. It's very clean, Maggie whispered. Why are you whispering? Shelley asked. No one is here, remember? What if Lacey is tied up in the attic? Maggie said, voice still hushed. Then she'd probably want to hear another voice so she can stomp on the floor and get rescued, I said. Do you hear her pounding on the attic floor with her tied up feet? We all stopped and stared up at the ceiling. Nothing. Okay then, Maggie said in her normal voice. It's really clean. It was. The kitchen had been redone in that pseudo-country style, with whitewashed cabinets, a farmer's sink, and butcher block on the large island. We walked slowly through the kitchen, into the dining room, then into the living room, turned left through the hall to a small office, then back into the hall to the stairs. And it's pretty, Shelley said. She was right. The rooms were beautifully decorated, but showed no personality at all. There were no framed photos, no kid art on the side of the refrigerators. The pillows had obviously never been used to smack a younger brother, and no one dared to kick at the rungs of the dining room chairs. It was very quiet. I could hear a clock ticking somewhere, but that was all. All the windows were shut, and the air had a faint potpourri scent. It's really quiet, I said. My house was always talking to me. A creak of the floorboards, the wind through the off-center window frame, the rustling of leaves against the side of the house. With 2 boys, how is it so clean? Maggie asked. Where are all the toys? They must have a maid, Shelley said. Maybe they're waiting for Country Living magazine to come by for a photo shoot, I said. I put my hand on the stairway banister and looked up the stairway. What do you think? Well, in for a penny, in for a pound, Maggie said, pushing me up the stairs. The landing was big enough to function as a family room, and it looked like people lived there. The remote control was on the floor, and video games were crammed into a very large, and I knew, expensive Longaberger basket. I'll take the master, Shelley called. You guys take the boys' room. I stared after her. Since when did we become Charlie's Angels? I muttered. Maggie giggled and slipped into a bedroom. I walked into Jordan's room. I'd like to say I used a clever detecting technique to figure out whose room it was, but since his name was spelled out on the wall in large wooden letters, I couldn't boast too much. His bed was made. All his Legos were in bins, his completed sets on a shelf. There were lots of age-appropriate books on his nightstand, and a very scruffy stuffed panda on the bed. Guys, come here, Shelley called. I went back out and followed Maggie into the master bedroom. Shelley stood in front of the walk-in closet. A walk-in in Mount Abrams? Most of the old Victorians had a single closet for the whole family. A walk-in was unheard of. Wow, Maggie said reverently. Look at all that space. I looked. She was right. There was a lot of room in the closet because it was half empty. Only men's clothes hung in there. Her clothes are all gone, Maggie said. I turned and looked around. There was nothing on the vanity, no perfume bottles, not even a comb. I crossed the room to start opening dresser drawers. They were all empty until I came to one filled with men's socks. Nobody packs everything they own to take a trip, no matter how long they think they'll be gone, I said, closing the last drawer slowly. Where did all her clothes go, if she didn't pack them in her car and drive away? Shelley asked. Maggie shuddered. Let's get out of here. This place is too perfect. It's giving me the creeps. As I stepped back into the landing, I looked up and saw the attic access panel. I stopped so short that Shelley bumped me from behind. What? She asked, then followed my stare. Do you think? I shrugged and reached up, grabbing the chain, and pulled open the attic steps. My house had the same access. I unfolded the ladder, and we all looked up into the darkness. I went up the stairs first, I said. Somebody else can climb up there first. Maggie took a deep breath and climbed up the ladder. I guess I was expecting her to scream in horror, or at least gasp. What she did was laugh and come back down the stairs. Cleanest attic I've ever seen, she said, refolding the attic and pushing it back up. Neatly arranged file boxes and an empty clothing rack. Totally boring. We went back downstairs and out the back door. Carol was sitting on the picnic table bench, a dog leash in each hand, and a disgusted expression on her face. Done? What do you all think you were doing, just going like that into that man's house? You should all be ashamed of yourselves, and I bet you didn't learn a thing. I took Boots' leash and shook my head. Wrong there. We did learn something. Lacey doesn't live here anymore.